What is good, YouTube? My name is Ash Porter and welcome to my channel. This week's book vlog, or non-fiction book vlog, we are looking at Jesus on Leadership by Wilkes. Now this book is a book I've actually read before. I read it during my degree. I did a degree in theology basically, and it's one of the lectures, what are they called? What are they called? Modules. One of the modules in my degree was on sort of Christian leadership, that kind of stuff. And so I found this book, it was on one of the recommended readings, and I really enjoyed it. But now, a year and a half later maybe, I want to refresh it. I didn't make the notes I would have wanted to make on it, and so I'm giving it another read. And just to give a bit of context, Wilkes, he's like a PhD in New Testament theology. He's a church pastor in America, and he's basically an expert on this subject. What leadership lessons can we learn from Jesus? How does he set the example, and how can we, maybe as Christians, or even if you're not Christian, what can we learn about leadership from Jesus? And so that's what we're reading. I'm well excited to dig into this, and so I will see you after day one of reading. So today kind of started with an introduction into the book, like a story from him about where he feels like maybe he failed in leadership and then refound his heart for serving. And so I think, the foundation of this book is it's called Jesus on Leadership, but the core principle at the center of it is this idea of servant leadership. What Wilkes would say is that Jesus was the ultimate model of being a servant first and a leader second. And that is our call, especially if you are a Christian, a follower of Jesus, is to be a servant leader. But I also think this applies in the whole of life, whether you're not a Christian or not. I think a servant leader is the way for it to be done. And so what does that look like? Well, first of all, it's about service. Serving people well is the goal, not gaining status or whatever. That's the first part of it. And then the second part is a servant leader, or he says, he serves the mission, and also serves those who are coming on the mission with them. So first of all, you're giving your all to when he says mission, this could be, sometimes he's specifically talking about church leaders, but I think this also applies to whatever you're called to in life, what your job is, where you're called to lead, because we're all called to lead in different ways, whether that's within our families or within our friendship groups, within our job or hobbies, or there will always be areas of life where we are called to lead. So that's the mission. So we're called to lead the mission wholeheartedly, and we're called to called to serve the mission wholeheartedly, and we're called to serve those who are coming on the mission with us. So, when you have a vision, when you have an idea, when you're a leader, people look up to you, people follow you. We all have positions where we'll have that, whether it's one person or thousands of people, that doesn't matter. I think we all have people who follow us or look up to us, and our job is to serve them as well as the mission. And then I think the final point for today, which he would argue, is since Jesus is the ultimate role model of this, or we as Christians believe he's the ultimate role model of servant leadership, is that you need to fully grasp this, to get the most out of it, to really understand servant leadership. You need to know Jesus. You need to follow Jesus, or know him, or know what he's about. And so that's the foundation of Jesus on Leadership, be a servant. And I think the rest of this reading, the next 7 chapters, which I think are the rest of the book, are 7 principles. Seven principles which he's pulled out of this about how Jesus models that and what it is to be a servant leader. So let's read more. All right. Today's reading was really good, actually. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it, and there's so many points I could pull out. I made so many notes, but there's just 3 things I want to cover quickly from today. Simply, the first one is this quote which he says, it's literally this, and it says, "We are not as important as we like to think we are." The first time I read this book, I know that quote really hit me, and it's the same today. I think it's so true of leadership or just being human, is that we're not as important as we like to think we are. Like, we can always be replaced. There's always people who are better than us or worse than us. Like, we're just a human. And yes, we have innate value in us, but we can't let our egos get too inflated thinking we're like irreplaceable and in our leadership. And so that's like, I think, a key value to take into leadership. Yes, you have value, but you're not like as important as you like to think you are. And then the second one is kind of similar theme following on, and it's all about egos and how, as Christians, right, so this, you know, is a Christian book, how when we are full of ego becomes our God. You know, our self-centeredness, I'm so good at this, I deserve this. It's like almost like an entitlement, and ego becomes our God as it inflates, becomes bigger. And how can God work in us when ego's taken his place? And so part of being a leader and being a Jesus-shaped leader is deflating our ego, putting our pride aside, humbling ourselves, remembering we're not as important as we think we are, and letting God work in us in that way. And then the final point, I mean, there was loads, but the final one he just started touching on is leaders have to be comfortable with the decisions they make and the fact that people are going to react to them. You know, leaders have to make decisions. Sometimes people are going to be happy about those decisions. Sometimes those people are not. Jesus had that all the time. Some people loved what he said, some people didn't. And as leaders, we have to be comfortable with conflict. We have to be comfortable with praise. We have to be comfortable and expect that people are going to react to what we do, to the decisions we make. But part of being a leader is facing them head on and saying, hey, this is my vision, this is the agenda, this is where we're heading. Do you want to come join in with this? First focus of what I read today, which is, I think, is really countercultural, you know. I think it is. Yeah, is that one of Jesus's like almost examples of leadership, of what he modeled, was to be a leader, you have to first be a follower. Like, that's part of servant leadership, is being able to follow, because one, if you're going to lead people, you're going to need to know how people think, what it's like to follow, what followers, you know, I say followers, and this isn't some kind of like subservient type following. We're just talking about, like, we all follow people. We all have people we look up to, or people that have, you know, more authority than us or whatever, whether it's at work and, you know, we don't really have a choice about that, or there's just, you know, people we follow who we aspire to be like, that kind of stuff. Anyway, if you're going to be a leader, you have to first learn how to follow. You have to learn how to, what he says, be someone who's obedient and acts out of love, because that's what following is. It isn't, you know, submitting to people and bending to their will, but it's showing them love and obedience because you believe in what they do. And so the first step, or another part of being a servant leader, is you have to learn how to do that, because you have to have gone somewhere before those you're taking with you can go there. And so if you're expecting them to follow you and trust you, you have to be someone who follows and trusts other people as well. And then next thing, he just touches on a little bit about stories, like when you're in positions of leadership and authority and you want to communicate the vision and get people on board. Jesus was a master at sharing story, and I think it's so relevant to our world now, to just humanity. We are story driven. Everything we do, you know, there's this great quote from Vikings, Ragnar Lothbrok, and he says, all things begin and end as stories. And I think that's so true. And so he just quickly touches on, you want to communicate a vision, you want to communicate what the future could look like. Use story to make sure people understand and can see and jump on board. And then the final thing, he just gives a brief warning of, authority is great and authority is awesome, but be careful how you use it. Don't, you know, lord it over people. Don't make people regret following you because you're misusing your authority. You know, power corrupts, authority corrupts. Don't let it corrupt you. Use your authority well. Use your authority to serve and bless those people around you, not to squash them and push them down. This is some good stuff, you know. This is some good stuff. I just want to read you a mad quote from literally the third page I read today so far, and it says, Leading, writes Dupree. So this is like quoting Max Dupree, who I don't know who he is, but he gets quoted like this book. But it says, leading is the opportunity to make a meaningful difference in the lives of those who permit leaders to lead. Like, that's beautiful, isn't it? Leading is the opportunity to make a meaningful difference in the lives of those who give you the opportunity to lead. There's weight to that. Oh, that's a great quote, isn't it? This morning was one of those mornings where it's like, brain, where are you right now? I'm feeling incredibly tired, and a lot of the time these words were just kind of passing me by as I was reading, but I was trying to focus, trying to make notes, which I needed, and there were some good quotes in there today, but I guess some of the stuff that really stood out to me, obviously that quote from before was quality, but I think one of the big things from today is this idea of stewardship as leadership. As leaders, it's almost more important that we're stewards rather than leaders, and like he defines that as like being someone who honors what's been given to them. So maybe that's the power, the authority, the position of leadership, the people serving under you, whoever. It's like being a steward is honoring what's been given to you and using it well. And like, I love that as leadership. I think there is a responsibility, and I think we can forget that in whatever position of leadership we're in, whether, you know, it's within our family, whether it's in our jobs, small scale, large scale, whatever it is, there's a responsibility there to be good stewards. And I really love that challenge. And to be honest, that's kind of all I needed to hear today. And so take that. Good morning. What a morning of reading. Actually, after yesterday's tiredness, I'm tired today, but I'm feeling a bit more alive, and I really enjoyed this morning. It was good fun. I feel like there was a lot to get out of it, and so some of the key things, quite simply, and this is just a general one, leaders have to learn from experience. You've got to learn from your past, your mistakes, your wins, your fails, your highs, your lows, whatever. You've got to learn from experience. Easy, simple rule of leadership. Probably of life as well, but life is leadership, isn't it? Anyway, secondly, passion. So passion, no matter what it is, passion drives our leadership. It's something like what we're motivated for, what we're passionate about. That is what drives us. And one of the things that Gene Wilkes was pointing out is that actually, and this is him speaking from experience as well, as sometimes if we get too focused on short-term goals, when we meet those goals, or maybe we fail to meet them, we lose our passion, and that can can affect our leadership, our drive, and just our work and what we're trying to achieve as a whole. Whereas if we can stay focused on the mission, the long-term goal, whatever area you're in, you know, I mean, his perspective is the work of the church. That's his long-term mission, is sharing the good news of Jesus. But that could be anything for you. What is your long-term life mission? And if you hold on to that and let that drive you instead of short-term goals, you're gonna be better off because of it. And then the final thing, which actually there's kind of two. Quick, another one. He touched it. It's one of my favorite things, but integrity. Do what you teach, model what you're speaking about, and then what you're teaching, what you're saying, has so much more weight if you're living it. That's the third. And the fourth thing, there is so much today, man. The fourth thing, and one that I think is probably the most challenging, is this whole book, this idea of Jesus-styled leadership. It's all about being something called a servant leader. We've touched on it a little bit before, but serving others. And he talks about the story of Jesus when he's having the Last Supper with his disciples. He's about to be betrayed and killed, and he does this crazy thing where he washes the disciples' feet. In a culture where as the leader, that's outrageous. You know, even in our world now, imagine if you were in just a meeting with your staff team and then suddenly your boss just got out a bowl of water and a towel and started washing people's feet. It'd be outrageous, and it was outrageous back then as well. But it's this idea of he was showing his disciples, I'm a servant here. And Gene Wilkes talks about this really, the key idea of, you know, one of the most unhealthy things in any team or any style of leadership is this idea of that's not my job. Like, are people saying that? And it becomes so unhealthy. And actually, great leaders, they take that responsibility. They say, hey, any job isn't too big or small for me. I'm going to do it and I'm going to serve people. But then he also adds this extra challenge, which I think is the most challenging. He says, the reality is in leadership, you're always going to come across people who disagree with you, who aren't necessarily on board, who are opposition. And the question is, if you're going to be a servant leader like Jesus, are you going to serve them? Because in that night, Jesus knew Judas was about to betray him. He knew that he had opposition, yet he still washed his feet. He still served him. And I think that's the challenge from this one. The challenge is to serve everyone, even those who may be in opposition to us. And that's a sign of great servant leadership. Gosh, that was so much from today, but I feel like it was a really good day. Some really good stuff in there that we could talk loads more about. But that's it. Another great day of reading this book. But the key things from today is leaders involve other people. Leaders involve other people. They get other people involved. The reality is, no matter, again, where your leadership is or what it involves or what you do or whatever, you can't do it by yourself. Like, so often we try to go it alone and we rely on ourselves and, I can do this. I don't want to have to ask people for help, whatever. But the reality is, leaders involve other people for their sake, for other people's sake, and for the sake of the mission that they've been given and that they are on, the area in which you are leading. And the way leaders do that is they draw people in, they share the vision, and they say, hey, you have something to offer to this, you have unique talents or gifts or passions that could help this mission go forward. And then you identify that, you share the vision, and then you get them involved. And ultimately, it's about helping them flourish as well. It's not just about, using and abusing them for the sake of the mission, but it's actually saying, hey, you're worth something and you can grow in this, you can be part of this, and helping them flourish within that. But then equally, the second part of this is kind of about leaders delegate authority in the same way that we can't do everything ourselves. We have to be willing to delegate authority. We have to be willing to say, hey, I can't carry everything in this. I can't do everything. You have got loads of potential in you. You have got the skills for this. You can do this. And when you do that, it's not just about giving them a job and saying, go do the job. It's saying, you have the authority to make decisions. You can speak for me. But when you give them that authority, when you give them that position, you also need to, as a leader, take responsibility. So you may be giving them the authority to go and do this and make these decisions and make this happen. Yet, if stuff goes wrong, a leader is the one who takes the blame. A leader is one who takes the fall. But when it goes right, you give credit to that person. You give credit to that person who you've given the authority to. And so leaders, we can't do it by ourselves. Jesus couldn't, he chose, not that he couldn't, he chose not to. There's a reason he gathered his disciples. He chose to use them and empower them and give them authority to go and continue his mission. Because also at the end of the day, I think we've said this before, a good leader, when they retire, when they stop, the mission can't die with them. It has to continue. And so a good leader has people to continue the mission and give authority to. Good morning. It is the final day, or has been the final day of Jesus. What is it? Jesus on Leadership by Wilkes. And the key points to finish this book, actually, I think probably the main, a phenomenal point to finish is this. And I'm just going to read this directly. A leader should be the one with the greatest team building ability. So that doesn't come from Wilkes himself. He's talking about this idea of team building, but that comes from Robert Greenleaf, who's also written a quality book called, I think it's called Servant Leadership. Yeah, I've got it in my bookshelf. I can see it from here. By Robert Greenleaf. It's quite an old book, but it is quality. It's still relevant, essential to leadership and servant leadership as well. But yeah, that idea that as someone who's a leader in a group of people should be the one who can build team the best, because team is so important to get any job, any mission, anything done. We've got to do it with other people. And a team builder is the one that empowers, inspires, sets the vision, shares the vision, draws people in, and just motivates and empowers that team. And the people who are best at that, not necessarily have the best skills at specific parts of that mission or job, but the best team builder should be the one leading. And then the final bit, which he touches on, the final part, is mentoring. Really simple. We should all have a mentor. We should all have someone who is like on our level playing field doing it with us, and we should all have someone we are mentoring. Which is way easier said than done, because I don't know about you, like for the last few years I haven't really had a mentor, and I think that's been quite hard at times, and I would absolutely love one, but it can be hard to find the right person, someone who's in the right stage of life, who wants to invest in you, has got the time to. It's not always easy, but equally finding people to invest in, I mean, that's kind of my job a little bit at the moment, but it's that three-way thing. Someone who's mentoring you, someone on the same playing field as you, someone you're mentoring, investing, creating leaders to continue the mission. And there we have it. That has been Jesus on Leadership by Gene Wilkes. And for the second time of reading it, the first time round I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, and I think, to be honest, I'd give it the same this time. Is it the best book on leadership I've ever read? No. But is it a really important one? Yes, because, for me as a Christian, I'm trying to base my life, my leadership, the way I'm living around Jesus, right? And then what his example and what he laid out for us. And that may not be for everyone if you're not Christian, but for me, this is really important. But equally, I think some of the stuff that we've covered in this book that Wilkes talks about is so important for all leadership, whether you're a Christian or not. This idea of being a servant leader is so important and so relevant for 21st century leadership. So this is a really important book in my opinion, and if you can't tell already, there's so much to learn from it. I'm really excited to write up my quotes, so now I'll have, actually looking at it, I've got quite a lot. I don't know if this is focusing, I don't think it will be. But I've got quite a lot of the quotes to write up. I've already made a ton of notes as I've been reading, so I have learnt loads from this book, and I feel like it is a quality book, and I really recommend it. And so there we go. I've been Ash Porter. This has been the non-fiction book vlog, whatever, and it's been a pleasure, and I'll see you next time.